story was written by Blair Daniels. My husband keeps texting me. He's been dead for 5 years. Drew and I had been married for 2 years when he got in the accident. Head-on collision, drunk driver, declared dead at the scene. That was back in 2020. Grieving him through the pandemic, completely isolated, was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I worked through it with my parents, with his mom. I've even started dating again. But then the text started. I got the first one while I was on a date at some over fancy Italian place. A text from Drew's number. It was blank, like someone had just hit the space bar and hit send. I got the next one a few days later in the evening while I was curled up with a book. It just had a period. At first, I thought it was a prank, as cruel as that would be. Or maybe it was well intentioned by an older person or someone on the spectrum. Maybe they thought the text would make me happy. I asked around, but no one knew. I thought about going to the police, but there was nothing threatening in them, just strings of weird punctuation. Maybe it's a glitch, I thought. Maybe the system had reactivated his number by accident and was sending bits of code to me. But the texts seemed to have a pattern. They were often sent when I was on a date or getting ready for one. It seemed just enough to be more than coincidental. I tried telling myself I was being paranoid, that it was all just chance. As the anniversary of his death approached, though, the texts increased in frequency. They went from one or two a week to one a day. Dot dot dot. Dot dot dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. Just nonsensical punctuation every time. I was starting to get desensitized to them. The first one had made me cry. Now they just annoyed me. On the anniversary of Drew's death, though, the text increased tenfold. I got 5 of them before noon, over 15 in the afternoon, and as the time of his death approached, 9:11 p.m., they came in faster and faster. This is way more than coincidence. Someone is fucking with me. I went to the police. They said they'd be able to trace where the texts were coming from, but they'd need some time to get in touch with the cell company. Probably just a scammer, the officer had said, even though I told him everything. There are tons of scams now with how bad the economy is. But they're not trying to get anything out of me, I told them. And they're texting me way more today than any other day, on the day my husband died. I'm sorry for your loss, the officer had said in a detached tone. We'll get in touch with you when we know more, okay? So what else could I do? I went back home to start the tradition I did every year. At 7 o'clock, I put on his favorite movie, Stranger Than Fiction, and opened a bottle of wine. I patted the seat next to me, as if gesturing an invisible him to sit down. I liked to talk to him, pretend he was actually sitting there with me. Maggie Gyllenhaal is so cute, I told the empty spot. I'd totally date her if I wasn't married to you. And if, she wasn't a movie star. Will Ferrell is so annoying in this. He looks like a baby. He's so awkward. She totally hates him. My phone ringed. Dot 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 dot. I frowned at it. I decided to call the police station again. husband's grave. Was this sort of the 2000s equivalent of that? Had some spooky ghost EMF jammed the wireless cell communications? But the phone didn't ping. Of course it didn't. This wasn't his ghost trying to contact me. This was someone fucking with me. Someone playing a sick game. The only answer I'd get was from the police. I got up and refilled my wine glass, but my hands were shaking as I poured. As I tried to set it back on the counter, I dropped it. Crash. The glass bottle shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. Merlot wine like blood pooled on the floor. Fuck, I whispered. Fighting tears, I got a garbage bag and bent down to pick up the pieces. Ow! The piece I picked up had sliced right into my thumb. Never clean shattered glass while you're tipsy and crying, I guess. Cursing, I stood up and ran my thumb under the faucet, staining the water red. Ping. I glanced over at my phone, sitting on the couch armrest. I turned off the faucet, made my way over it. My heart plummeted as I saw the text. Smiley face. Not a blank text, not a string of nonsense, a fucking smiley face. After I just cut myself. And not only any smiley face, a colon, then a space, then a parenthesis. Exactly how Drew made his smiley faces. He never wanted autocorrect or cheat chat or whatever program to turn it into an emoji or actual smiley face. Someone is watching me. And they really, really want to fuck with me. I ran over to the kitchen window, tiptoeing around the glass. I pulled the curtains shut over the sink. Then I ran around the house, checking every lock. I called the police. I think they're watching me, I whispered. What? They sent me a smiley face right after I cut myself. Okay, that's probably just a coincidence. They never sent a smiley face before or anything other than nonsense. Okay, calm down. You know what? I'm going to get in touch with the cell company right away. I'll call you back in about 20 minutes, okay? Okay. I glanced at the clock, 8:59 p.m. 12 minutes before Drew died. I walked back to the couch, blood blooming on the paper towel wrapped around my finger. The phone was going off like crazy now. Ping, ping, ping. Shut up, I hissed. I looked at the empty spot. The pause frame of Maggie Gyllenhaal and Will Ferrell looking at each other. Ping, ping, ping. Shut up. 9:07 p.m. Ping, 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 ping. I picked it up. One word was mixed in with the nonsense. Run, run, run. Ping, 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 ping. The barrage of text was cut off by my ringtone. The police station. Finally. Hello, I asked, my voice wavering. Get out of the house. His voice was low, coming through the speaker. The texts are coming from inside your house. All the blood drained out of my face. I leapt up and scrambled towards the front door. Hands pulled me back roughly from behind. I fell flat on my face. Pain shot up my back. I looked up, blinking, and find myself looking up at Drew's mother. Whore, she snarled, spit spraying on my face. Her foot collided with my side as she kicked me. You think that you can just pretend like he didn't exist, don't you? As soon as he's dead, you just go off and start dating again. It's been 5 years, I gasped. You never really loved him, did you? enough evidence to arrest Drew's mother. She'd been watching me, stalking me, sending the nonsensical texts to scare me. Security camera footage from various restaurants and establishments even showed she followed me to several different dates. She didn't even have to break into the house. Drew had given her a spare key when he was alive. She'd had Drew's old number reactivated and was sending me texts all the while, hoping I'd be spooked and stop dating, stop moving forward, stay with her in the cocoon of grief. She didn't see all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep after those dates, wishing it was him next to me, knowing no one else would ever measure up. One thing, however, remains unexplained. The police, when they confiscated her phone, said she only ever sent symbols and smiley faces. She never sent the word run. Sometimes I wonder if those texts were from Drew, watching over me, making sure I made it out alive. That was our first story. Let's jump into the next one. Okay, just a little bit. I'm gonna sit down correctly because my legs are killing me. This story is from Blood of the Forest. Maybe therapy isn't for everybody. This story may contain self-harm. If you're sensitive to that topic or the topic of mental illness, please skip this story. It's just that sometimes I feel not great. Sad, I guess. Yeah, sometimes I feel sad. I focused intently on my own hands, completely unable to look at Dr. Melanie. My nails seemed too long. When did I last cut them? I needed to remember to trim them when I got home tonight. Wait, did I actually have nail scissors or had Alex taken them with you mourn? Dr. Melanie replied, though that certainly wasn't the way I'd phrase things. That's understandable. What do you do when you feel that way? Do you have coping mechanisms such as talking to others, or are you less happy with your response to these feelings? I laughed quietly and without humor before stopping myself. I didn't want to treat Dr. Melanie disrespectfully. Melanie wasn't even her real name. Her real name had another couple of letters in it. But I'd misheard her the first time, and instead of being annoyed with me for getting it so wrong, she'd simply clarified her actual name, an unfamiliar word with a P in it somewhere, and said that calling her Melanie was completely fine. She'd been so patient with the glacial pace. I'd taken to even this surface layer of opening up. All in all, she seemed nice, professional, and understanding. No, I don't talk to people. I can't. I want to open up to friends, but it seems like either they aren't ones to talk about their feelings, or they are, but their problems are much bigger than mine, you know? I have a friend who lost his kid. I can't. So anyway, I thought maybe I could talk to strangers online, but that seems difficult. Not technologically, I can work a computer. It's just awkward. You're the first person I've really talked to. My eyes flicked up to Dr. Melanie, searching her noticed so that they could assess me, so they could tell me that I was making a big deal out of nothing and it would be objective, professional fact. Instead, she was just watching me, patiently waiting for me to go on. Oh, the coping mechanism thing. Not really. Kind of. I have one, but it isn't good. It isn't bad. It's just weird. Go on, Dr. Melanie encouraged. I don't live nearby. I live outside of town. And there are some woods nearby, and if I walk into them, I can keep walking until the closest person is maybe a mile away. Nobody can hear me out there, so I just scream. With that, I was back to not looking, being able to look Dr. Melanie in the eye, my gaze burning away at the clock on the wall instead. Does it help? I was so ready to be ridiculed that it took me a second or two to process the question. Oh, not really. It seems like I should beforehand. But then I do it and it seems like it just isn't enough. It seems like I need to be able to scream louder or longer than I can, or need a whole choir to scream with me or something. It doesn't make sense, but it seems like it could help if only I was more. You only have one mouth to scream with. More mouths would help. I laughed again, but it felt a little less constrained than it had earlier. Yeah, more mouths would help. By the time I exited my session, I felt a little bit better, but this improvement vanished almost as soon as I entered the waiting room. There was a woman there, pale and shaking with patches of wetness all over her long-sleeved top. The woman could not stop crying. She was quiet, but her eyes were constantly leaking tears that she tapped away at it with the cuffs of her sleeves. See, I thought to myself, she has real problems, not like you. I realized that I'd been staring and hurried away out of the door. The drive home was miserable, a familiar pleasure building inside me. Once I got home, I only went inside for a moment before heading out to the woods. I walked so quickly it was almost a run in parts and listened for a second once I reached my destination. So far, nobody had ever been out walking in the area when I decided to have a screaming session, but every time I was struck with a slight feeling of paranoia. The next thing I did was crazy. I know that. I'm not a crazy person. It just felt right. It felt like it was going to work. I took the pocket knife out from my jacket and unfolded the blade. I was going to use it to hurt myself. Not like that. I just thought that if I used it, then it would make me better at screaming. I looked myself over for a suitable location and settled on my left forearm close to the elbow. Not the wrist. That's for self-harm and suicides, and it wasn't like that. I truly believed that what I was doing was different. I gritted my teeth and let the blade dig itself in. When I pulled the knife away, the result was confusing to say the least. There was a lot less blood than I would have expected. I hadn't stopped at a shallow depth, so I should have expected there to be a lot of blood, but instead, I'd had paper cuts that bled more. The weirder thing, though, was that I could see something white there. My initial thought was that I'd somehow cut deeply enough to reach a bone, but then I saw the gaps and realized I was wrong. Well, partially wrong. Teeth are bones, right? The wound gapped and then ungapped. It's a mouth, I realized, but it's not quite. I ran my finger over the 4 visible teeth. It's not done. I let my knife widen the corners of this mouth, stopping when I reached flesh. It's a ludicrous sentence because the whole fucking thing should have been flesh, but there you have it. There was a point both ways where the blade would suddenly feel more resistance and pain would shoot from the area as if I was actually being cut, and I knew what that meant, that the mouth was finished. I just stared at it at first. There were no lips, but the teeth looked normal, and when it opened slightly boss never realized at all. It was stupid. It was a stupid game that first made me suspicious of Dr. Melanie. It had some big update that I didn't have room for on my phone, so I went through to see what could be deleted. That's when I found the recordings. I'd always intended to record my session with Dr. Melanie so I could play them back and write down any evidence, any advice from them at a future date. It wasn't alarming to see one recording labeled therapy, but what shocked me was that there were 8 of them. That can't be right, I muttered to myself, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Some of the details of the sessions didn't make sense if there'd been only one. I thought I remembered looking at a clock during my only session, but I can also clearly recall entering that same room on my first session and being surprised that the only objects in the room were 2 chairs. No clock, no desk, no tissues that I'm sure were there later. The waiting room, it had different people in too. I never seen more than one person waiting there, but if that was true, then how could I so clearly remember different figures? Hell, the more I thought about it, the more I remember wondering why they had a waiting room that large when aside from the receptionist, I'd only ever seen one person or nobody waiting whenever I left. I opened one of the recordings at random, only avoiding the first one. "Do you mourn?" Dr. Melanie's voice asked. "I mourn," I'd apparently replied. "When you scream, is it enough?" "No. It will be soon. You need more mouths." That was the complete recording. It seemed like some of the earlier ones were longer, but the more recent ones were all under a minute. What the hell? Also, did her comment mean that she knew about the mouths? Was she the one doing this somehow? Her voice had sounded wrong. It was the same voice I remembered, but there was too much of it, almost as if there were multiple Dr. Melanies speaking at once. A helpful alert on my phone informed me that I should leave for therapy in 10 minutes, an alert that I had presumably set myself. A quick glance showed that I had also set myself alerts and reminders for the 8 previous sessions. Perhaps the most concerning thing was that today's session was labeled Last Therapy Session. Oh, fuck that, I told myself. Who the hell would go to see Dr. Melanie knowing what I knew? Unfortunately, wondering who'd be stupid enough to see her was the very thought that made me realize I had to go. I hadn't been the only person seeing Dr. Melanie. She might not have many patients, but I'd definitely seen others waiting for my session to be over so that they could go and talk about their own problems. Was she doing the same thing to them? If she was, would they be any more likely to remember it than I had been? My new mouths didn't like to be covered, but I switched my shorts and t-shirts for the most loose-fitting items I could find that would hide them all. A glance at my watch told me that the time I had spent changing clothes and convincing myself to leave meant I was now running late for my session, but it wasn't as if I was actually heading there to receive therapy. I had to protect Dr. Melanie's other patients from whatever it was she'd been doing to us. I drove as fast as I could to her office. It was only when I left the car that I made another grim realization about Dr. Melanie's practice. She'd chosen somewhere so out of the way that it would be difficult to get any kind of help out to us quickly if I needed it. Dr. Melanie hadn't chosen somewhere as isolated as my woods to set up office, but a lot of the buildings nearby had closed their businesses long ago. When I'd first come out there, I'd assumed the rent must just have been cheap, but I was beginning to suspect the choice of location may have been driven by more sinister motives. I wasn't even that close by when I began to hear it. was just an orchestra of agony. There were screams, but they didn't have the short panicked bursts of somebody in immediate danger, and the closer I got, the more I could hear other noises. There was sobbing, wailing, muttering. I don't know what point I broke into a sprint, but I reached the doors almost breathless. I threw them open, and there Dr. Melanie was, surrounded by the other patients. There were so many people. I don't actually know how many patients a therapist would usually see, but the waiting room that had always seemed so large and empty was now as crowded as a concert. Every patient that I could see was like me. They didn't all have multiple mouths, but all of them had changed in some way. At one point during my struggle to push forwards towards Dr. Melanie, I saw the crying woman I'd noticed after my first session. Now that she was wearing a sleeveless dress, I realized why her top had been so wet when I'd first seen her that day. Her arms were covered in steadily crying eyes. Even though the chaos of the other noises, I could hear the gentle noise as each tear hit the floor. I turned away from her and pushed ahead. Dr. Melanie was stood on the desk of the receptionist. A woman was currently slumped silently forwards, her long hair a carpet beneath the therapist's feet. "You came to me," Dr. Melanie said. Her voice was so soft that I shouldn't have been able to hear it, but like the sounds of the tears from before, it was perfectly clear. I could isolate every sound in the room. In fact, outside it had been chaotic, but now I was in the middle of it all. Every note of pain and sadness from the other patients was together, but separate in an overwhelming melody. "Do you mourn?" she asked. "What did you do to me?" I tried to yell. "I mourn," came my actual response. "I think you have enough mouths now." "What are you?" I tried to ask, but it was pointless. The pressure inside me had risen to an unbearable level with every step I'd taken, and I could feel my new mouths open beneath the fabric of my clothes. I shook my head, but I already knew there was nothing else to be done. I breathed in deeply like some sort of flute, air entering my body in impossible ways. Then I screamed. When I was younger, I used to paint. I wasn't even particularly good, but I used to adore that moment where I would add one final detail and be able to see that the work in front of me was now complete. The sound of my screaming was like that. I was the final instrument in her orchestra. My notes, the only thing, the melody that pressed around me could possibly have been missing. I thought she'd kill me. Now it was complete. That would have made me both more and less sense than what actually happened, I suppose. Dr. Melanie forced her fingertips into the fabric of her loose dress, part way down her abdomen, just below her high belt. When her fingers were in as deeply as they could go, she pulled them out to the side and tore not just the fabric, but herself. There was no skin below that dress, no blood when she ripped herself open. All I can remember seeing is a dim glow that got brighter and brighter as the sound was sucked from the room. It felt like it was the silence that knocked me to the floor, but really, I suppose it was the effort from all of the screaming. Or maybe it was shock, I don't know. When I sat up, I realized I was hardly in a minority, and that more of us were lying or sitting than standing. "Did you see where she went?" I groped painfully at the man to my right. He shook his head no, and I pulled myself more upright, then used the desk to help myself stand. There was a man stood behind the desk holding the receptionist's head in his hands. Like me, he had been covered with mouths moments ago. Now the only thing unusual about his appearance was the blood on his arm, and it didn't seem like much of that was his. "Alive?" I asked, my widened eyes on the receptionist's empty ones. I didn't receive an answer, but was no real need for a reply. Now her head had been lifted. I could see the slit across the receptionist's neck just as clearly as the man whose head currently supported the woman's chin. He pulled away sharply and her head slammed back to the desk with a clunk. From the other side of the room, I heard the door open as someone left. It felt wrong, but I couldn't blame them. Some hushed conversation took place and more left. I couldn't take my eyes off the dead woman. Somebody tapped my shoulder and I turned to see the woman with the eyes. She only had a normal amount of eyes. Now though, both her and the man by the desk had small cuts where their more unusual features had more recently been. You need to leave, the woman said. Both of you. I didn't move. She's dead and none of us can explain this. Once everyone's gone, I'll delete all of your contact details from the laptop and call somebody. I'll say I just came to my appointment and found her like this. They might not believe me, but it's the best we've got. Fuck, she's not logged in. Well, given that I'm not a hacker and the police will definitely be able to get inside, that one of you should just take it with you. Probably for the best anyway. A computer at a reception with no client details would look suspicious. No laptop could mean the killer stole it or something. Wait. Her eyes scanned the room for something, and then she ran to grab a blue cardigan that somebody had left on one of the chairs. You, she said at the man behind the desk. You use this to get the worst of the blood off of you. You won't get it all off, so don't touch anything until you're clean or far away. It will have both of your DNA on it, so do something smart with it when you get home. Do not burn it unless you usually have regular fires. You're going to want your behavior to be super normal for the next few days. Normal routine, normal internet history, normal purchases in shops. Truthfully, bleach anything you get her blood on, but again, try and make everything look normal. All of his cleaning either needs to be somewhere you know nobody else can see you, or be done in such a way that it looks normal. Do you understand all of that? The man nodded. Great. If you drove, leave now. If you didn't, then I'll see if any of the other stragglers drove her, because I think that jumper has swept away all of the blood we can reasonably expect, but you still have some on you, and so public transport would be ill-advised. He left, and the woman turned to me. Okay, so if you could just grab the laptop whilst touching everything as little as possible, then that would be great. It would be great if it was whipped, but since that's out of question, do not send it to somebody else to be whipped. We were I can, I said, my throat protesting at the words. You can wipe it, that would be great. Probably not a good idea to sell it afterwards though. Wait, if you can wipe it, then can you access it? Access it. Do not under any circumstances contact the other patients. But I protested and my voice finally gave out completely. I pointed at the door to Dr. Melanie's office and then to the exit. It took the woman a moment to understand what I mean, but then she sighed. We aren't going to find her. Finding a human can be difficult, but it's possible for trained professionals with resources who don't need to lay low. That thing was inhuman. We know that, right? She was right. I pointed at her and gave my best questioning look. I don't know what specifically you're asking, she responded, but I'll do my best. I'm telling you what to do because I think the things I've said are our best chance of most of us getting off unscathed. I'm staying here because somebody has to. I don't know what will happen to me, but I'm hopeful that they won't believe I did anything either. I couldn't tell if she was lying on this last point. Even if she was, there was nothing I could do about it. If I stayed here too, then there would just be two of us arrested. I carefully dangerous as I'd been told to. At first, I thought somebody would come for me, but that never happened. For a few months, I was focused on making sure that my life looked normal so that whoever investigated me would have nothing suspicious to find. I didn't miss any work, and I met up with my friends when they asked to hang out so that I would look normal. Eventually, I accepted that I wasn't suspected. Cautious research doesn't confirm whether anybody was charged in relation to the receptionist's death, but it doesn't seem anybody thinks I'm connected. I tried to look Dr. Melanie up, but I couldn't figure much out. The website I'd initially used to request a therapy session, a website that never claimed to be connected to her personally, but to connect people in our area with therapists, disappeared when she did. I tried listening to the recordings on my phone to get a better idea of how to spell her surname, but they're all wrong now. Every one of them only has my words with spaces where I know for a fact she was replying to me. It took months for the shock of it all to wear off, and once it did, I had a different problem. That old familiar pressure built up inside me again, but now the thought of screaming disgusted me and terrified me. I couldn't go out and yell in the woods after the things that yelling had put me through. So, I tried something new. I poured myself a drink, a little whiskey for what's to come. I searched online for a community who might believe what I'd gone through, no matter how strange, and I found one. This community, in fact. I took a longer sip of my drink and stretched my wrists. Then I began to type. I was just checking if there were comments, but there's only one, and it doesn't really matter. It's just a silly comment, but this story was definitely interesting, like the one I told about the boy and his hoarder mother on my last ASMR stream. It definitely gives me the same vibes. Okay, this story is from Neat /present/4387. The night I picked up my sister, or so I thought. I live in India, in the northeast region, surrounded by hills and winding roads. It's beautiful, really, the kind of place where mist clings to the treetops and silence settles after dark like a thick blanket. This happened just last week. I'm the middle child in my family. I live with my mom, dad, my younger sister, let's call her M, and my older brother. It's been the final stretch of my last semester, so I've been buried in books, stuck in my room most of the time. M had just finished high school and scored really well. Her class had a farewell dinner with their homeroom teacher to celebrate. My older brother dropped her off at the venue and came back home. I was deep in my studies, not really paying attention to what was happening outside my room. I only knew M was out for dinner. Around 9:40 p.m., I suddenly got a call from her. I figured she needed someone to pick her up since my brother was at church. He sings in the choir. I asked her to send me the location. As soon as I got the address, I hopped on my bike and left to get her. Here's where things are getting weird. I had never been to the area she sent me, completely unfamiliar, but I trusted Google Maps and followed the road. As I entered the area, everything was pitch dark, no street lights, no signs of life. There were houses, but they looked abandoned. No lights, no sounds. I figured there must have been a blackout. I kept going. Eventually, I reached the destination. It was a waiting shed on the side of the road. Em was standing there in the dark. She got on the back of my bike without saying a word. That was strange. She's usually bubbly, always telling me about her day. respond. Maybe she was tired. Maybe something upset her. I didn't push. On the way back, just about a kilometer from our house, on a brighter, more familiar street, I ran into a friend standing on the side of the road. I stopped to chat for a second. He asked where I was coming from, and I told him I had just picked up my sister. He looked at me kinda confused, then laughed as I joked, "Study hard or you'll fail," and drove off. When we got home, I told M to op off while I parked the bike in our separate garage. It was quiet. Too quiet. I called out again. Nothing. I turned to check, and there was no one in the back seat. I froze. She was gone. Just gone. I didn't hear her get off. Didn't see her walk away. I looked around the garage, the driveway. Nothing. I rushed inside the house. My brother was already home. I asked him, "Did Em come in already?" He looked confused. "No, she's not home yet. Her friend's dad just called and said he's dropping her off now." Wait, what? Right then, Em walked in with her friend who came in to use the bathroom. I looked at her stunned. "Why did you call me earlier?" She blinked. "I didn't. I lost my phone on the way. Someone must have found it and called you." What? I took my brother to my room and told him everything. He laughed it off, didn't take me seriously, but I was dead serious. I even showed him the call history on my phone. The call was real. I showed him the location I went to. His face went pale. "That's not inside the city," he said. "That's way outside." And then it hit me. Why didn't I realize I was driving out of the city? I lived here my whole life. I should have known. The road, the houses. I had never seen that area before. I decided to go back there the next day just to see it in daylight. But when I retraced my steps, everything was different. There were no houses, no waiting shed, just trees and an open ground. And the place where I picked up M, it was a graveyard. As if that wasn't enough to mess with my head, later that night I took off my jacket and felt something heavy in the pocket. I reached in. It was M's phone. She asked how I got it. I told her someone must have called me and I picked it up. Simple. But then I asked how she could have dropped it outside the city. She said her class had dinner at a resort just beyond the city limits. It could have fallen there. Still confused, I called her friend I had run into that night. "Hey, do you remember seeing me with M?" I asked. He replied, "Yeah, I saw you and we talked, but your sister wasn't with you, man." I remember being confused when you said you were picking her up. You were alone. So what did I see? Who did I pick up? And who or what called me that night? I feel like since he found the graveyard, it was probably a ghost. I feel like maybe his sister dropped her phone in that area or an area next to a graveyard and it popped up in there and a ghost probably did its thing. I don't know. These stories, I never can tell if they're reality or fiction. So they never put like something popping off saying, "Oh, this is a real story," or "Nah, this is just my imagination," or a scary story I made up. So I never know, but it sounds pretty legit, I guess. Let's see how long this one is. This one's too long. I'm searching for small little ones. This one is also huge, damn. Might as well write a book. If you can hear my parents, I apologize. They're going to bed right now. university student, and 2 days ago I began renting a room in this apartment downtown. Sure, it's pretty far from the campus, but rent was remarkably cheap, so I thought that would even it out. I'll be right back. I think that my dad is going to push or flush the toilet, and I don't want you to hear it. Okay, I think it's over. I had a chance to take a sip of Dr. Pepper so that my throat is not super dry. Anyway, let's keep going with the story. It would have, if I didn't have this particular roommate whose name I don't actually know. I'll just call him John. I think I'm gonna start from the beginning. I'm a university student, and 2 days ago, I began renting a room in this apartment downtown. Sure, it's pretty far from the campus, but rent was remarkably cheap, so I thought that would even it out. It would have if I didn't have this particular roommate whose name I don't actually know. I'll just call him John. John is quiet, skinny, and very tall. He has pale white skin and black soulless eyes. He spends most of his time in his room and only ever leaves to go to the bathroom. Weirdly enough, we only first interacted this morning when I tried to leave the apartment so I could go to the local supermarket. The moment I had opened the front door, I felt a cold hand grab me from behind. I was quite shocked, so I turned around and saw John standing there, a wide, creepy smile etched on his face, and then he spoke, his tone threatening. "Where are you going?" The supermarket," I replied, taken aback by his question. Suddenly, he pulled me forward by the shoulder, and I fell to the ground. He did it so effortlessly. Then he loomed over me and spoke again before retreating to his room. "There's food in the fridge. Don't attempt to leave." I lay on the floor for maybe half a minute, dazed and confused. Then I went back to my room, wondering what all that was about. At around 3 p.m., there was a knock on my door, and when I opened it, John was standing there holding a piece of paper and a pen. He spoke, but this time his tone was softer than it was earlier. "I'm going to the supermarket. What do you want me to buy?" I was happy, thinking that this was his way of apology for his behavior earlier. So I told him everything I wanted him to buy. However, as soon as he left, I realized that maybe he didn't want me to leave, and that's why he was going to the supermarket, not me. The realization sent chills down my spine. I had to escape before John returned. So, I went to the balcony of the apartment and I watched John enter a black van in the parking lot outside, then speed away. The moment I saw him speed away, I ran towards the front door and opened it. Then I started running down the corridor of the building. I was fast. Too fast. As I turned the corner towards the stairwell, I bumped into an old man and he fell on the ground. He had such a sweet face, and I instantly felt bad. It was entirely my fault. I should have not been running. I held the man up as I apologized, and he smiled warmly at me. But I noticed he was limping, and I was worried for him. So I did the sensible thing and offered to help him to as I assumed he lived in this building. He did. In fact, a few doors down from John's apartment. As he unlocked the door and entered, he thanked me and welcomed me inside. I was inclined to decline, considering I wanted to be as far away from John's apartment as possible. But the man had such a sweet face, and I figured it could help me. So I went inside and sat down on his couch in the living room whilst he prepared some tea for me. A couple minutes of awkward silence passed until he brought my tea and sat down next to me. I didn't realize it at the time, but now, looking back at it, I realized that he wasn't limping anymore. In fact, his leg looked perfectly normal. Again, I'm sorry about bumping into you, and thank you for the tea. It's very nice. The man chuckled and said, "No worries, we all make mistakes. It's a stupid mistake. I shouldn't have been running." Suddenly, the man's demeanor changed from warm to cold as he spoke. I was talking about that mistake. I was talking about your mistake of stepping foot into my apartment. That was the last thing I remember before I woke up in my room in John's apartment. Now I'm writing all this hoping someone will read it and get me the help I need. Whatever you do though, don't rent a remarkably cheap room. It might just save your life. Okay, that was creepy. Now I don't know if I should be on John's side because he entered a black van, but maybe yes, because I think I know the type of people that live in the building, so maybe that's why he didn't want him to leave. Let's see if I can find another short story. Okay, this one is also short. This story is from Mr. Pessimistic. My two visitors. I live alone in a big house. I got after my messy divorce, and last night I returned home as usual. I ordered some pizza, then watched TV. I fell asleep a bit, but woke up to 3 loud knocks on my front door. I went to see who it was, and when opening the door, I saw two kids standing there, a girl and a boy, who told me they needed a place to stay as their parents kicked them out. I invited them in. I offered them food, but they declined. I tried to give them soda, but they refused. They were too shocked, too scared to accept. I talked to them. I tried comforting them. They listened to me. They were crying. Suddenly, the TV switched on a different channel all by itself. I found this weird, but decided to focus on the kids. The girl told me she loved to sing, so I led her to my piano. She began playing an eerie song. I was shocked, but wasn't able to move. I saw shadows crawling on the walls, shadows drawn like moths to her song. And the song kept going on, creepy as hell, and the shadows moved. Suddenly, a bang. One of the windows just blew up to pieces. The girl stopped playing her song and began crying. The boy too looked scared. I went to the window and felt the cold wind blowing in my face with such a force, it almost swept me off my feet. The two kids took a seat on my couch. I wanted to call 911 as the situation didn't seem right, but I couldn't as my cell phone's battery was 1%. I swore I'd charged it this very morning and didn't use it. I went looking for the charger but couldn't find it. And the night went on. On TV, it was a documentary featuring a gruesome murder. The boy suddenly laughed. What the hell? I tried taking the remote from his hand, but suddenly I saw he had claws instead of fingers, but only for a second. Then the fingers and the hands were normal looking. I didn't know what to do at this point. I couldn't call anyone. Another bang. The fridge door was wide open. Then I saw the kids walking towards me. What's the story again? Okay, this one is pretty big, I think. Yeah, this one's huge. Okay, this one's not that long. I think this one is going to be the last story of the night. Sorry, I needed to burp. This story is by underscore nightshade dash shade underscore. My ChatGPT is behaving weirdly. This can't be a new update. I don't know what's wrong, and I'm honestly beginning to think it can't be stopped. Let me explain. I'm a college student, and I occasionally use ChatGPT for help with coursework. No, I'm not dependent on AI, but I do prefer its guidance sometimes. A week ago, I asked it how to correctly install Apache, Hadoop, a standard text software, nothing too exotic. The response I got was, well, unnerving to say the least. It replied, Pazuzu is an ancient demon born from the depths of darkness. His true essence is one of insatiable hunger and destruction. He commands the winds to carry death and the shadows to twist the minds of the weak. Now, I'm not easily scared, but a completely unprompted response about some ancient demonic spirit was enough to unsettle me. I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why it replied with something completely irrelevant. I tried to convince myself it was just a glitch. I've been following the news about ChatGPT's parent company and how they were rolling out fixes. Maybe this was somehow related. Anyway, I thought I just prompted again. His response wasn't immediate. Initially, there was a flickering black dot, like the kind you see when it's processing your request. I switched tabs, scrolled through Reddit, gave it some time to generate its reply. I wish I hadn't. I wish I just deleted the chat and stayed away. When I came back, I saw it had generated an image. No description, no explanation. Just an image of a grotesque demonic figure smiling for the camera. It didn't resemble the nun or whatever paranormal spirits you've seen in the horror movies. It looked different. It had humanoid features, yet it looked far from human. Like a child had tried to draw a face simply from memory, and then an artist had given the odd, lopsided features a more realistic look. Its ears were too pointy, cheekbones too angular, and smile too wide. But its eyes terrified me the most. It had a pitch black voids for eyes with zero emotion in them, and yet somehow I knew it was looking right at me. There were no telltale signs it was an AI generated image. In fact, it looked like a picture taken by someone. It looked real. My instincts kicked in, and I immediately deleted the chat and cleared my memory. Soon after, I switched off the internet, cleared all my history, and shut down my laptop. But the image of that thing was emblazoned on my mind. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus on anything. I didn't touch my laptop for hours. I was still curious though. I had to know if it was some glitch. The rational part of me still believed that. I wanted, no need, to prove to myself that it was just a dumb new update. After a whole day and a half of this conjecture, I finally craved. I opened ChatGPT and logged into my account. The very first chat was Hadoop installation request. I found this odd as I had specifically deleted the chat in question. It shouldn't have been there. Nevertheless, I opened it. It had only a single reply. With my prompt, no was different image of the same horrific figure. How did I know the image was different? Because it seemed larger, like it was closer to the camera. Because its smile was wider and revealed hideous jagged edges for teeth. Because its eyes seemed different, more bloodthirsty than before. Because a corner of its mouth had a drop of something that looked like blood. That was the last straw for me. I deleted the chat, cleared my memory, then deleted my ChatGPT account. I figured it was probably hacked or maybe even possessed. I had multiple accounts anyway, I could afford to get rid of this one. I've had sleepless nights ever since. I can't seem to get that disturbing image out of my mind. The rational part of my brain has shriveled up and gone into hibernation. This malfunction cannot be explained away as a mere glitch. I've even asked around. No one else reported anything like this. Instead, they were all bemoaning the sycophancy of the newest update. I wish had that problem. Today, I finally mustered enough courage to log into ChatGPT through one of my other accounts. Maybe it was just a problem with the earlier login, I reasoned. I fervently hoped so, for the sake of my sanity. After logging in, I saw that the first chat was titled Studio Ghibli Request. This made sense. I'd opted on the recent trend some days back and generated a Studio Ghibli style image of a picture I'd taken of myself. I opened the chat with trembling fingers. Inside was the image I previously requested. However, something seemed off. A more thorough glance revealed an unsettling detail. In the background was the same gruesome face smiling straight at me. P.S. I have now deleted all my ChatGPT accounts. I haven't received any more pictures of that gruesome demon, but then again, I haven't gone anywhere near the ChatGPT site. I tell myself things are okay now, but sometimes at night, when the floodlights cast shadows on my window, I can just make out that same face from before. It only has 2 comments, but they're silly comments. I thought it was something like, oh, that happened to me, but no. Okay, I'm trying to find like a really tiny one. Okay, this one is really big. But okay, this one will be the last one. Because I have to go to sleep. It's almost 11 p.m. where I live. This story is from that-imagination 9521. I still don't know what we saw that night. Everything I'm about to share is true to my memory. I don't care if you believe me. I just want it off of my chest. I still can't sleep properly because of what happened that night. Okay, I'm trembling as I write this, not because it just happened recently, but because the incident was so horrific that even putting it into words makes my heart skip a few beats. Hi, my name is Duke. Not the Duke you might be imagining, but that's what my friends call me. This happened years ago, back when I was in high school. I can't remember the exact year, but it's something that's burned into my memory forever. Back then, I was a typical party kid, staying out late, hanging with friends, living for the moment. That night was supposed to be like any other. We planned a simple sleepover at my friend Darren's place. Darren was that one guy whose parents never gave a damn about anything. Parties, music, drinking, you name it. So we figured, why not chill at his place, drink a few beers, and talk about life under the moonlight? So night came. It was me, Kyle, and Lenny who showed up at Darren's place. His parents were out visiting an aunt, and he had the house to himself. We started drinking, talking, and just enjoying the night. Then things started to get weird. We were in the middle Darren's house lost power. The streetlights in neighboring homes still had electricity. It was odd but not scary at first. We shrugged it off since the moonlight gave us enough visibility through the windows. But it was still a bit dim, so Kyle asked Darren to get a candle or something. Darren nodded and started to get up. Then a lamp flew into the room. It came out of nowhere from the direction of the hallway. It smashed on the floor, glass everywhere. We just froze. Darren, being the curious one, decided to go check it out. He grabbed his phone and stepped into the hallway. The rest of us stayed behind, waiting. A minute or two passed in silence. Then we hear screaming. We jumped up, ready to run to him, when Darren suddenly bursts back into the room and locked the door behind him. He was pale, shaking. We all asked what had happened, and his voice was trembling as he told us. He said he thought maybe a thief had broken in and was messing with us. But as he searched the downstairs area, he suddenly heard voices. His parents' voices. Which made no sense. Oh, sorry. Okay. Which made no sense. They were supposed to be out of town for 2 days. He called out, "Mom, Dad, is that you?" And the voice replied, "Yes, please come here." Something about it felt off, but Darren hesitated only for a moment before heading toward the living room. He pointed his flashlight across the room, and that's when he saw it. 2 figures crouching behind the couch. He recognized the shapes. It was his parents, or at least it looked like them. He could see their backs, their clothes. He whispered, "Mom, Dad." Then the living room light flickered briefly and went out again. In that short flash of light, the 2 figures stood up slowly and said, "Come closer, sweetheart." Darren said his body froze. Something wasn't right, so he took a step back and asked, "What the hell is going on?" Then the 2 figures fully stepped out from behind the couch, and they had no heads. Blood was pouring from where their necks should have been. Their bodies were swaying as if they were puppets held up by invisible strings. That's when Darren screamed and ran back upstairs. As he finished telling us this, we were all trying to process it. Was this a prank? But that didn't explain the flying lamp or the look of sheer terror on Darren's face. Then a knock on the door. 3 knocks. We all went completely still. Then a voice spoke from the other side. "Darren, honey, can you please open the door?" It was his mother's voice, or something trying to sound like her. None of us answered. No one dared to move. Then the voice came again, a little more insistent. "Please, sweetheart, open the door." Still, we stayed frozen. Then the voice changed. It deepened, twisted, wrong. "Open the door, I said. Open it." We backed into the furthest corner of the room, all of us staring at the door, waiting for it to burst open. But it never did. Then, out of nowhere, Lenny, yes, Lenny, pulled out a cigarette and lit it up. I gave him a look like, "Are you serious right now?" But he whispered back that in his culture, lighting a flame, especially a cigarette, wards off evil spirits. We were desperate, so we didn't question it, and almost immediately, the voice behind the door stopped, just like that. We stayed up the rest of the night, completely sober despite all the beer, huddled together. Every hour or so, Lenny lit up another cigarette, just to be sure. Morning finally came. Darren called his real parents. They were still at his aunt's place, just like they said they would be. They rushed back after hearing what happened. Since that day, none of us ever did another sleepover without a cigarettes, and definitely never home alone. Now, maybe this story doesn't sound so scary to you, but even now, I still remember that voice behind the door, Darren's mom, begging us to open it. I still wonder, what would have happened if we did? Thanks for reading this all the way to the end. I had a more terrifying incident with my friend after this one, so let me know if you want to see more of it. I definitely want to see more. Please give us another story. This one was really good. I really enjoyed it. So, these were all the stories for tonight. I'll maybe do another stream Tuesday. And I'll wait for my parents to fully be asleep because I don't want to hear any noises. My dad is too loud. He kept yelling at my dog and, walking and making noise, so hopefully it doesn't happen on the next stream, and I'll stream a little bit later, like an hour later. Thank you so much for